Welcome to True Reddit Reads, where real-life stories are told in the voices of those who stayed silent for far too long. Today I'm sharing a journey that isn't just about betrayal, loss, or pain, but about the quiet strength one person can find when facing family storms, calculated manipulation, and wounds inflicted by those closest to them. You'll hear about a so-called golden boy younger brother, a basement dweller streamer, and master manipulator who conned his whole family to steal his grandfather's pension. About scams straight out of a movie-stolen mail identity theft, fabricated accusations, and the systematic destruction of his sister's future and reputation. But most importantly, this is a story about someone who found the courage to stand up to say no and to fight for herself even when the world turned its back. If you've ever been trapped in a toxic web spun by your own family, if you've ever been falsely accused or forced to fight those you once loved most, then this story is for you. Chapter 1: The Basement. Brother. I used to think there was nothing worse than a useless family member, until I realized that uselessness is just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath it is a calculated kind of toxicity. His name is Pal, my younger brother. Pal has never matured a single day in his life. He flunked out of high school, and from that point on, retreated straight into our parents' basement and rooted himself there like mold. His reason. He needed time to realign his passion. That passion, it turned out, was playing video games 16 hours a day, wearing the same ripped pair of shorts and screaming profanities at teenagers on Discord. I swear to God, the basement smells so bad that if you open the door at 3 a.m., the stench will rise like it has its own soul, and that soul is addicted to Mountain Dew. At first I thought, maybe he's just figuring things out. But Pal wasn't figuring things out. He was digging himself a hole. He applied for a part-time job at GameStop, showed up exactly twice in the first month, then quit because he claimed they were creatively exploiting him. Then he proudly announced to the whole family that he was going to be a full-time streamer, building a Twitch empire from the gaming chair he bought using my mom's money. The same mom who still calls him my sweet boy, who's trying his best. We lived in two completely different realities. I worked full-time at the hospital. I'd wake up at 6 a.m., make coffee, and drop by to care for our grandfather who'd been declining after a stroke. Pal, he got up at 2 p.m. because he had to stay up late streaming for his international audience, which in human speak means yelling at strangers online for views from the 11 subscribers he had. And then came the kicker. He started sending me to-do lists in the family group chat every Sunday night. To-do lists. With things like, you should vacuum the basement to maintain the cleanliness of my creative space. Imagine working a 12-hour hospital shift, coming home exhausted, and getting a text from a man-child in your basement asking you to clean his toilet. That's when I started drinking my coffee black. No sugar. Still, I kept my mouth shut, because I knew the moment I spoke up, my mom would react like I'd just insulted an angel. In her eyes, Pal was a poor soul trying to overcome societal pressure, an artist who was simply misunderstood. I remember the exact moment when things started going off the rails. It was Grandpa's 85th birthday. The whole family had gathered cutting cake, and I accidentally mentioned that Grandpa receives a $200 monthly railroad pension. Pal heard that number like someone had just unlocked a legendary achievement in a game. His eyes lit up like LED lights, and from that moment on, he started plotting. 3 days later, he called a family meeting. Sounds bizarre, right? A guy who refuses to wash a single dish suddenly knows how to organize a meeting. He claimed Grandpa needed masculine energy when it came to caregiving, and that I, a woman, was too emotional and untrustworthy with finances. I presented Grandpa's medication schedule and the care plan I'd maintained for the past 2 years. He said I was drugging Grandpa to sell prescriptions to the hospital. And my parents. Dad nodded. Mom held my hand and whispered, maybe letting Pal take care of Grandpa will help him grow up. I couldn't believe I was living in some kind of dark comedy, directed by none other than my own blood. But trust me, this was just the beginning. Worse things were coming, and I had no idea that I was about to lose everything just because I had the audacity to say no to the basement brother. Chapter 2. The day I lost the right to care for my grandfather. I used to think that if I did everything right, cared properly, sacrificed my time and energy, then at the very least, I'd be recognized. But I underestimated two things: Pal's level of manipulation and my parents' level of gullibility. After that ridiculous family meeting, things escalated so quickly, I didn't even realize how I'd been kicked out of the game. 1 week later, I was no longer allowed to take Grandpa to his checkups. 2 weeks later, Pal officially moved Grandpa into the basement, which up until then had been his sacred battleground of 4 monitors, flickering LED lights, and a moldy smell that couldn't be replicated. My mom said it's a quiet space, more suitable for the elderly. Sure, quiet. If you ignored the nightly yelling of Pal, screaming at stupid noob kids until 3 a.m., I tried to stay calm. I tried talking to Mom, told her Pal had never cared for anyone in his life, that he couldn't even tell the difference between the white pill and the yellow one. She held my hand, eyes misty, and said, "You have to learn to trust your brother. Just once. Trust. The guy who once left the freezer door open for 3 days and made the whole house eat ice cream that smelled like fish." I tried monitoring Grandpa from afar. His medication schedule disappeared from the fridge. Every time I called to check in, Pal would answer saying he's sleeping or he's doing Sudoku. The problem is, Grandpa had severe hand tremors. Writing was already hard for him, let alone filling out Sudoku puzzles. I started feeling uneasy. That feeling grew heavier each day, especially when I found out Pal was using his caregiver role as a PR stunt for his Twitch channel. One day, I accidentally stumbled onto his stream. In the middle of a game, he suddenly turned to the camera and said, "Sorry I'm late today, guys. Had to take care of the old man downstairs. Being a caregiver is tough, but hey, good people don't get to choose their roles, right?" His fans showered him with hearts and donations. Meanwhile, I clenched my fists so hard I drew blood. And then, that day came. I left work at noon and stopped by the house, despite the do not violate the therapeutic space rule. I went down to the basement, and the smell hit me first. A putrid, sour, fishy stench, like someone had left a dirty diaper inside an oven. My grandfather was lying motionless on the floor. His body was filthy, soaked in urine, skin pale. His pillow was thrown to one side, and his pill organizer, the same one I'd bought, was being used as a snack tray. Inside were crushed Dorito crumbs and greasy stains. A flattened bottle of Mountain Dew lay next to it. Not a single pill remained intact. Pal wasn't home. I ran upstairs and called 911 immediately. Grandpa was taken to the hospital with severe dehydration, early signs of bed sores, and signs of medication mismanagement. As the ambulance pulled away, my phone exploded with notifications. A barrage of texts from Pal. "You're just jealous, aren't you? You're trying to sabotage my caregiving career. You bitch! I'll sue you for abducting my patient." Patient. Did this idiot think Grandpa was an NPC for his live stream? I didn't respond. I just waited for my parents to arrive at the hospital so they could see Grandpa with their own eyes and face the truth I'd been screaming for weeks. But when they arrived, Mom cried. Not because of Grandpa, but because of Pal. "You ruined Pal's first real chance at finding direction." Dad shook his head, gripping his fists, looking at me like I was the traitor. "You had no right to take him away. That's elder abuse." I turned and looked at Grandpa through the glass hospital door. His frail body hooked up to oxygen, his hands, trembling lips, cracked from dehydration. "You're calling this a chance for Pal?" And then Pal showed up at the hospital. No guilt on his face. And he said the one thing that almost made me scream: "If you can't support the success of this family, then you're not part of it anymore." My dad grabbed Pal's hand and echoed him. "It's best you leave. Come back only when you're ready to apologize for your jealousy." They banned me from seeing Grandpa. Banned me from coming home. And I I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot for an hour, hands shaking, mind blank, until I remembered that small lockbox Grandpa had given me years ago. Inside were his military medals, a few old photographs, and a stack of documents. One paper sent chills through my entire body as I read the first line, medical and financial power of attorney, designated agent, my name, signed in 2019. And just like that, I knew I wasn't alone. Not this time. Not anymore. Chapter 3. I had to burn the whole act down. I used to think I was the good daughter in a dysfunctional family. But that day sitting alone in my car in the hospital parking lot, I realized something. I had become the villain in the play. Pal was directing a play where my parents weren't just supporting characters. They were the loyal audience. But I had one weapon Pal didn't see coming, a legal power of attorney. Signed by my grandfather, notarized, witnessed by a lawyer, and stamped with all the proper seals. This document had been sitting in my drawer for years, one I never thought I'd have to use. I spent the next 3 days gathering evidence, the medication charts I'd made, the threatening texts Pal sent me, photos of my grandfather lying on a filthy basement floor, and most importantly, bank records showing over $47,000 in suspicious withdrawals, gaming gear, RGB keyboards, cryptocurrency, and I swear I'm not making this up, a $5,000 collection of waifu figurines. Pal had drained Grandpa's retirement account like it was his personal loot chest. I set the plan in motion for that Friday. The day Pal was heading to TwitchCon, which he claimed was for networking with top-tier streamers to expand his brand. Meanwhile, I was preparing to network with the police and adult protective services. 2:00 p.m., Pal was live on stream, confidently munching on snacks, yelling at his 12 loyal viewers about fake gamer girls ruining the industry. 3 knocks on the door. The police walked in. Pal turned to the camera and chuckled. Unless you guys are Overwatch fans too. No. They were there to talk about the $47,000 he spent on things that had nothing to do with elder care. His chat watched the whole thing in real time. I walked in moments later holding the power of attorney in my hand, staring him down. Medical staff were already prepping Grandpa for transfer to a veteran care facility. Pal screamed from his gaming chair. This is gamer oppression? This is anti-streamer discrimination? When the officers started unplugging his PC and collecting each peripheral as evidence, Pal actually cried. I'm not exaggerating. He sobbed as they pulled the RGB keyboard cords out of the wall. You can't just touch that keyboard, it's limited edition. I stood there, not even a twitch of my eyebrow. I used to think he was just an overgrown child who didn't want to grow up. But no, he was a calculated manipulator. 6 months later, Pal still hadn't returned to the basement. My parents told me the police had sealed off the room for investigation. Pal now sleeps on the living room couch, wrapped in a blanket like a sad failed burrito. I thought I'd won. Until my credit card got declined when I tried to buy a snack. First thing I did, check my bank account. Then my phone exploded with alerts, default notices, collections threats, unpaid bills, 3 months of debt, none of which I'd seen coming. A call from the bank confirmed it, ma'am. Your account is showing over $18,000 in debt from various sources. It started approximately 3 months ago, and just then, my phone rang. It was Pal. His voice was sweet, artificial sugar sweet. Funny how karma works, huh? I put the phone down. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I changed my shirt, tied my hair back, and drove straight to my parents' house. I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was I wasn't staying silent another second. Chapter 4. He started a fight, I brought a war. I arrived at my parents' house with shaking hands and a head full of questions, none of which made any sense. Everything was a mess. My bank account had evaporated. My credit score was shredded like wet paper, and Pal, my twisted excuse of a brother, had just called to laugh in my ear like he was the villain of some low-budget action movie I didn't realize I was starring in. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I knocked again, harder, so hard the decorative wreath shook like it was about to fall off. I saw movement inside shadows flickering. Finally, my mom opened the door but kept the chain lock on. Her eyes were red and puffy, and the part that hurt most, she couldn't look me in the eye. "You should go," she whispered, like she was scared of her own voice. I choked back the lump in my throat. "Mom, I need the mail, the bills. I haven't received a single thing in 3 months. My credit cards are frozen. My score tanked. Doesn't that seem odd to you?" She shook her head slowly. "Pal told us everything. He said you tricked Grandpa, stole documents. We thought, maybe you needed some time to cool down. Once you've calmed down, we can talk again." I wanted to rip that door off its hinges, not to get in, but to wake her up from the ridiculous dream Pal had spun around her like a spider's web. But I just stood there, swallowed my rage, and turned to leave. That's when I saw Mrs. Chen, our neighbor, watering her plants near the fence. She looked at me and waved. "I saw your brother take the mail every day," she said softly with a gentle Vietnamese accent. 3 o'clock every afternoon. Every day, same time. I thought you asked him to." I froze. "You saw him clearly, very clearly. I even wrote it down in my notebook." Mrs. Chen had no idea, but she had just thrown me a lifeline while I was drowning in a grave Pal had dug for me, complete with a headstone that read, "Here lies her reputation." I rushed home. As soon as I stepped through the door, my phone rang. It was my boss. "We received garnishment paperwork for your wages due to outstanding debt. Why didn't you inform us?" My knees nearly buckled. I I never got that paperwork. "It was mailed 6 weeks ago," she replied coldly. "This could affect your employment status." Panicked, I drove to my apartment building's management office. The property manager, Barb, pulled up my records. "Someone submitted a change of address form for your mail about 2 months ago. Here we have the signature on file." I looked at the screen. The signature looked like mine, but it wasn't. The strokes were rushed, overly slanted, a poor imitation if you knew how I actually write. "This is forged. I never signed anything." Barb frowned. "You should file a report. This is mail fraud. Federal crime." I nodded, head spinning. I went home, opened my laptop, and scrolled through Pal's Twitch archive. I needed something. A mistake, a dumb comment, a trail he left behind, and he left more than that. In a stream from a few days earlier, he laughed directly into the camera and said, "Chat, sometimes karma's slow, so you gotta speed it up." My sister thinks she's smart. She's about to get hit hard, and the best part, she doesn't even know it's coming. I screen recorded everything, saved it to 3 hard drives, uploaded it to Drive, emailed copies to myself. An hour later, the video was gone, deleted, but too late. I had it. The next morning, I went to GameStop where Pal worked part-time. I didn't know what I was going to do. "Punch him?" Scream cry, one of his coworkers, a guy named Marcus, came out to greet me. He's in the stockroom. But, he told us you've been stalking him. Showed us screenshots of text messages from you. What messages? Ones that sounded like you were threatening him? I couldn't even speak. I turned around and walked away. That night, Jake, my boyfriend of 2 years, called. "Pal sent me a bunch of messages from you. They sound unhinged, like you're trying to destroy him. Did you actually write that stuff?" Jake forwarded the screenshots. They were messages I had sent, but they were spliced, edited, cut up. Simple things like "I can't believe he did this" were turned into "I'll destroy him at any cost." "Jake, you have to believe me. They're fake. I never wrote anything like that." He went silent, then sighed. "I don't know what to believe anymore." After we hung up, I didn't cry. I opened Instagram, checked my DMs. There was one unread message from Jenna, my best friend. "Hey, Pal asked me about your work schedule. Said he wanted to surprise you. I thought it was weird, so I didn't answer, just wanted to let you know." A surprise? So, this wasn't a surprise. This was a hit. Planned, timed, calculated. Pal wasn't just ruining my life. He was rewriting it, then forcing everyone else to read his version. He didn't just steal my mail. He stole my identity, my reputation, my relationships, and if I didn't stop him in time, the next chapter would be me listed under bankrupt. Chapter 5. This wasn't a personal attack. This was a full-on extermination campaign. The next day, I woke up early, drank a cup of bitter black coffee, and parked at the end of the street. At exactly 2:45 p.m., I sat in my car phone in hand, ready to record. 3:00 sharp. Pal showed up like a perfectly timed NPC in some survival game. That familiar silver Honda pulled up near the mailbox cluster. He stepped out, glanced around, unlocked my mailbox with a key, and stuffed every piece of mail into his bag like he was doing his goddamn job. I hit record. He didn't see me. When he turned to leave, I stepped out of the car. He froze, saw me. His face turned pale for a split second, then he bolted like a rat with its tail on fire, jumped in the car, slammed the gas, and sped straight toward our parents' house. I didn't chase him. I followed quietly, steadily. When I arrived, I didn't go in. I stood just beyond the fence, listening. I could hear his voice through the window. He was on Discord, his voice crystal clear. Yeah, bro, she's going crazy now. Wait until she sees the tax fraud claim I sent to the IRS. I'm gonna report her for financial abuse of Grandpa. They're gonna say she embezzled him. The IRS tax fraud. My skin went cold. This wasn't just petty revenge anymore. Pal wasn't just trying to damage me, he was trying to destroy me. From the roots up. Over the next week, the anonymous attacks escalated. Co-workers started whispering behind my back. One of them pulled me aside and asked, "Are you okay?" Someone called asking questions about prescriptions. HR received 3 anonymous complaints accusing me of drug use at work and unsafe financial behavior. Every time the first of the month rolled around Grandpa's pension payday, I got hit. Weird texts, spam emails, anonymous reports, false allegations. I started seeing a pattern. Then one day, I got a message from a stranger on Facebook. You don't know me. My name's Megan. I dated your brother 3 years ago. I saw your post in the community group about mail theft. He did the same exact thing to me. We met at a coffee shop. Megan dressed, simply, her hair tied back. But her eyes belonged to someone who had walked through hell. He forged documents, stole my mail, called my job, got me fired, destroyed my credit. I couldn't rent an apartment. It took me 2 years to recover. She opened her laptop and showed me dozens of screenshots, messages from Pal bragging about his accomplishments, telling friends he was teaching uppity women a lesson. One Discord screenshot read, "She thinks she's better than me. I'll crush her until she can't get up again." I sat there frozen. Pal didn't just want to win, he wanted to annihilate. I rushed to see Tony, our longtime mailman. He sighed, stroked his mustache. I was wondering, someone changed the address but still showed up at the mailbox. I thought something fishy was going on. I can confirm it's fraud, he added. This is a federal crime. 2 days later, Tony was reassigned. The new carrier refused to talk to me. I got it. Pal was tracking every step I made. He shut down every lead the second I got close. But what he didn't realize was that he was only making me stronger. That Sunday, my dad texted me saying Mom wanted to reconcile over dinner. I went suspicious but willing. And as expected, Pal was there too, grinning like the cat that had just licked the cream bowl clean. Mid-dinner, my dad frowned at a credit card bill. "There's a charge at the leasing office of your apartment building." That's odd. Pal quickly put his fork down so fast I noticed his hand shake just slightly. Must be fraud. "You should report it, Dad." But my dad's gaze lingered on me, and for a brief second, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Doubt. The first flicker of doubt in his eyes. The next day, I got a call from my cousin Alexis. He told me you're bipolar, that you're off your meds. He's trying to convince the family to stage an intervention. I didn't even feel surprised. I recognized the pattern now. This was exactly how Pal manipulated his way into Grandpa's care, by painting someone else as unstable and himself as the savior. He was doing it all over again, this time with me. I sat down, opened my laptop, created a Google Drive folder. I named it The Truth About Pal, the Exposure Campaign, and I began uploading every piece of evidence I had by the day, by the step. I wasn't on defense anymore. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was preparing for war. Chapter 6, The Counterstrike, from someone with nothing left to lose. I was no longer the quiet girl sitting in the corner at family meetings. No longer the eldest sister trying to keep the peace because we're still family after all. No. Now I was a woman with a Google Drive folder titled Pal and a very long list of everything he had wrecked in my life. And I was done playing defense. I started documenting everything. Every time Pal called, messaged, tagged me online, said I was crazy, I logged it. Every time someone mentioned an anonymous call about me, I asked for names, timestamps. Content. Each night, I updated my drive like I was writing a war diary. Then, out of nowhere, Pal tried to return to the veteran care facility where Grandpa was staying. He brought with him a forged power of attorney document demanding Grandpa be discharged back home so he could care for him. What he didn't know, I had already warned the center. Every nurse, every security guard, every physician knew his face. They turned him away and called me. I came in immediately, presented the real documents, the signed power of attorney screenshots of Discord chats where he bragged about cashing in on the old man's pension. They added his photo to their internal alert list. I heard later he stormed out screaming, "This is feminist elder abuse," before kicking the door and driving off. A few days later, my mother called me alone. Her voice sounded different. For the first time in forever, it actually sounded confused. Pal knows everything about your finances, every debt, every bill, even your credit card numbers. How is that possible? I didn't have to answer. She knew. I saw it in her eyes the moment a mother realizes she's been feeding the wolf and throwing the only honest child out the door. But doubt wasn't enough. I needed indisputable proof. That's when fate sent me a fairy godmother named Mrs. Chen. She knocked on my door one evening holding a weathered notebook. The cover was worn, but inside I nearly cried. A neighbor's journal, detailed entries, dates, times, and precise descriptions. 3 full months of Pal stealing mail from my box at exactly 3:00 p.m. At first I thought you asked him to collect it, she said, but then I noticed he never gave it to anyone. He just took it and ran home. Her notebook was a living backup of the crimes I couldn't prove with video, and it came from the last person Pal would ever expect, the little old lady with the rose bushes. I wasn't stunned because I had won. I was stunned because I realized I finally had an ally. That Sunday night, I was invited to dinner again. I said yes. I brought a USB. I brought a photocopy of Mrs. Chen's notebook. And I brought the calm of someone who had nothing left to lose. Pal was there, of course, sitting there spooning mashed potatoes like a child recovering from media trauma. During the meal, I casually brought up his new streaming schedule. That's all it took. Pal exploded, screaming about privacy stalking, how I was a sick sister obsessed with ruining his life. And my parents finally saw what I had been seeing for 3 years. They looked at each other. They didn't say a word, but their eyes had changed. After dinner, Pal cornered me in the hallway. His eyes weren't wild anymore. They were cold. "If you hand over the power of attorney," he said, "I can make this all go away. Clear your debt. Fix your credit score." I smiled, my hand in my coat pocket, recording everything. "Oh, so you're finally admitting you did all that?" He paused, then laughed. "Whatever, pick your poison, but I promise if you don't back down, you'll lose everything." Later, my mom pulled me aside. Her voice was soft, broken. "How does he know so much about your private life? How blind were we?" I didn't answer. I just handed her the photocopy of Mrs. Chen's notebook and walked away. That day, I stopped being the victim. I became the witness, the main character, and I finally understood I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting to protect the truth. Chapter 7 unmasked the criminal who played the victim. I didn't think there was anything left for Pal to take from me, but I was wrong. Someone like him doesn't stop when you fall. He only stops when you're buried. And he thought I was already halfway in the grave, but he miscalculated. I discovered that Pal had started planning my destruction before Grandpa even ended up in the hospital. 2 weeks before Grandpa's stroke, I had been focused entirely on his care sorting medications, setting up routines, barely paying attention to anything else. And that's exactly when Pal made his first move. He changed my mailing address, forged letters, faked my signature, and launched what I now call his reputation erasure campaign. When I reviewed the timeline in my drive, it all became clear. Every attack he'd orchestrated lined up perfectly with financial milestones, either Grandpa's pension deposits or my own bill due dates. Each deposit triggered a wave of false mail rumors reports, anonymous calls, and manipulative texts. But Pal forgot one thing. I wasn't fighting alone anymore. Jake, my ex, reached out. His voice was low, almost ashamed. Pal sent me more edited screenshots, but this time he messed up. One of the images still had original metadata. The timestamps didn't match. The font styles were different. I saw it. I know you were telling the truth. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just nodded like I'd been handed back a tiny shard of my stolen dignity. Jake began helping me. He used his IT background to reconstruct message chains, analyze timestamps, and build a coherent timeline. For the first time in months, I felt like someone was truly on my side. We compiled a master spreadsheet. Every accusation Pal made, every doctored message, every piece of real evidence, from text screenshots and Mrs. Chen's notebook to bank security camera footage of Pal trying to access my account using a fake ID. It wasn't enough to prosecute, but it was more than enough to unmask him. At the same time, Megan Pal's ex sent me her full archive. In it were texts from Pal to her friends, messages like, she thinks dumping me is the end. I'll make sure she can't rent a single apartment in this city. If she doesn't want to stay with me, I'll make damn sure no one else stays with her either. Sound familiar? Because it was exactly what he'd done to me. I stared at every message. Each line was a mirror. Every tactic he used on her he had recycled for me. Mail theft, mental health rumors, falsified evidence, and always making himself the victim in front of family. This wasn't a fluke. Chapter 8, The Moment. Pal shattered. I didn't need to win. I needed justice. After that family dinner, no one said a word to me. No calls, no texts, but I could feel it. The wind had shifted. 3 days later, my dad called. Not to scold, not to blame, but to apologize. I found this while cleaning out the garage, he said. It was behind some Christmas boxes, 3 mailboxes, each one packed with my mail bills, debt notices, bank statements, even personal letters, all opened, all hidden away. My father didn't say another word. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, he realized the truth. He had spent his whole life protecting the wrong person. At the same time, Pal's world began to crumble spectacularly. My parents cut off his access to the credit cards, changed the garage code, stopped buying his groceries. He reacted like a child who just had his favorite toy ripped away, screaming, smashing furniture, throwing his keyboard, the last relic of his failed streamer empire. But every outburst was captured on the new security cameras installed barely a week before, and like a reflex, he shifted to the next phase, begging. He called me using a blocked number voice, choked and desperate. Sis, I know I messed up okay. Please just give me one more chance. But this time I wasn't the forgiving big sister. I didn't say a word. I simply played him back the hallway, recording his own threat, cold as steel. If you don't give in, you'll lose everything. I heard him gulp on the other end. I hung up. Not because I was angry, but because I was done. Done explaining myself. Done being the adult in a family that always made me the shield. That night, I came home to my studio apartment, the tiny place I'd kept by selling nearly everything I owned, and found a large trash bag by my door. Inside a smashed keyboard and a scrawled note, I lost everything because of you. But you'll never be at peace. I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I simply opened my camera app and sent the footage to the police, along with every piece of evidence I had on Pal. The forged documents, the stolen mail, the direct threats. I didn't want to win anymore. I wanted him to be bound by the law just as I'd been bound by the truth. A few days later, my mother called. Unlike before, her voice actually trembled. Did you send Pal's location to someone? He came home at 3 a.m. last night, pale, throwing things into a bag, saying people are after him. He says, "You hired someone." I exhaled, slow and steady. "No, Mom, I didn't hire anyone. But Pal owes money. Real money. To people who won't believe he's a victim. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to call the police, file lawsuits, or press charges. I simply forwarded screenshots from Pal's Discord where he bragged about being deep in debt from crypto, from gambling, from high-interest loans. I sent those to the accounts that had threatened him before the ones he'd borrowed from. He was the one who sowed the seeds. I just made sure they had enough light and water to bloom. A week later, Pal's stream vanished. His Twitch account was gone. Social media silent. No more memes mocking me. No more my sister's psycho videos. And then my mother sent a picture Pal had left in the middle of the night. His car loaded with clothes, instant noodles, and a bag of waifu figures. She wrote, "For the first time in years, the house is quiet." I didn't reply. I just opened the window and watered the little plant on my balcony. The one I'd planted when I first moved in, when everything was still broken. Now it had new leaves, just like me. Chapter 9. When the community spoke. The web of lies collapsed. After that final unmasking at the care center, everything started to move like dominoes. I once thought that to expose a manipulator like Pal, you needed the law courts or investigators. But in truth, the greatest strength came from the people around me, neighbors, friends, those who had once stayed silent on the sidelines. News of Pal's permanent ban from the care center spread quickly through the neighborhood. Mrs. Chen, like a moral librarian, began telling other neighbors about the young man who took mail every afternoon. Then Tony the mailman returned to our street just to confirm to every homeowner that Pal had committed mail fraud, a federal crime. A small group of elderly neighbors who once only gossiped about gardening formed an unofficial mailbox watch club. Every afternoon, right when Pal used to show up, someone would stand near the mailbox's phone, ready recording any suspicious activity. One day, Pal tried to pick up a package in my name and was stopped on the spot. The delivery driver even filmed it and sent me the footage as evidence. This little community had never banded together like this. And Pal, once an invisible ghost, was now surrounded by a wall of vigilant eyes. My family was no longer his fortress. My parents changed the locks, set new garage codes. They stopped buying his groceries. My dad, the man who once walked him through every problem, now stood cold and firm whenever Pal came begging. It was Dad who found my stolen mailboxes, hidden among Pal's junk, stuffed behind old boxes of used games. By now, the housewife, the security guard, the delivery driver, the mailman, they were all witnesses. Pal had nowhere left to run, and me still buried in debt and financial fallout, but for the first time in months, I felt protected. HR at work called me in not to reprimand, but to apologize. They reviewed every email, every anonymous complaint, and saw the same pattern all traced back to one person. My boss offered me flexible hours to handle family matters. I knew little by little trust was being rebuilt. Jake, after everything, stayed by my side. We didn't talk about the past anymore, didn't revisit those days when he doubted me. We simply focused on finding trust, again, one small step at a time. Megan was the ultimate ally. She started a private Facebook group for victims who'd had their finances destroyed, their reputations smeared by Pal or men like Pal. On day one, 2 more women joined. Both had been conned credit, wrecked, slandered by Pal. We shared every tactic, every red flag, every counter strategy that didn't break the law. More and more community groups started posting warnings about Pal. Wherever he appeared, someone would remind others of the legend of Pal, the mailbox thief, the king of fake victimhood. Predictably, Pal lost it. He spammed me with threats from dozens of unknown numbers, pretended to be strangers, reporting me on social media, spun up fake accounts to call me crazy, a thief, a plagiarist, anything as long as he was the victim. No, but no one believed him anymore. Everything that Megan, Mrs. Chen, and the whole community had done left him nowhere to hide. My parents finally agreed to see a counselor for the first time in 30 years. They looked back at their choices. I didn't need their apologies. I just needed them to stop defending the indefensible. The night I moved into my new studio apartment, I sat among the old boxes, staring at my little space. There was a time I thought I'd lost everything, but really all I lost was the illusion of a perfect family. I still had Grandpa protected by the power of legal documents. I still had Mrs. Chen watering her plants each evening, Megan and Jake, a small but fierce community, strong enough to say no to people like Pal. I realized if just one person stands up and speaks out, they can be called crazy. But if an entire community stands up, even people who seem unrelated, the truth cannot be silenced forever. Pal is still out there flailing in his web of sock puppet accounts and petty cons, but his circle keeps shrinking. Everywhere he goes, someone exposes him. Every old trick is shut down before it can even begin. As for me, every morning I water my balcony plants, call Grandpa, and smile, because finally, after all this time, I'm not afraid anymore. Chapter 10. Calm after the storm. I didn't need to win. I just needed freedom. 6 months after Pal officially exited my life, I can finally look back with a much greater sense of peace. The scars of debt destroyed credit gossip, the doubt from family and friends. They're still there, but they no longer control me. Every day feels like a test. I wake up in my tiny studio apartment, water the little herb garden on my balcony, read, caring messages from Megan, and a few other women who were once Pal's victims, make my own coffee and look out at the sunlight streaming through my window. For the first time in so long, I understand what true peace feels like. Not perfect happiness, but a gentle relief from no longer living in the shadow of manipulation and control. Grandpa, the man I thought I'd lost forever, is still well cared for at the nursing center with the trust fund I set up, ensuring he never has to worry about money or being neglected again. Some days when I visit, he's clear and recognizes me. Other days, he mistakes me for my mom. But I know I've done everything I could to protect him, and that's enough for me to sleep soundly at night. My parents have changed a lot. After Pal disappeared, the house suddenly felt bigger, brighter. They gradually learned how to live without constantly defending a son who never wanted to change, no longer jumping at every phone call, fearing more drama. Dad went back to his old hobby, woodworking in the garage. Mom signed up for senior yoga classes at the community center. Sometimes I swear they look a decade younger, just from not having to raise an overgrown child of 40. Jake came back too. He doesn't promise forever, but he's honest enough to start again with me this time, with more boundaries and mutual respect. We date simply coffee on the balcony, evening walks, under the streetlights, real conversations, as two adults who understand their own wounds and each other's. And Megan, the strange new friend I met, thanks to Pal's disaster, turned the private Facebook group into a safe space for sharing, warning, and supporting those who've been or are being manipulated by their families. More people join every week, not just Pal's victims, but survivors of people like him. We share resources, guides on dealing with bad debt, how to report mail fraud, and how to heal your mind after surviving family hell. One day, I stumbled across a small online article. Pal had been arrested in a distant state for check fraud and financial scams. The piece didn't mention his real name, just described a failed streamer with a messy history. I didn't feel joy, didn't feel vindication. I just felt that things had finally settled on the right path, that consequences had arrived, even if no one had to force the wheel of karma. I know my scars will never fully fade. My credit will rebuild. Relationships will heal, but I'll never be as naive as before. The biggest lesson I learned: freedom doesn't come from proving you're right. It comes from daring to set boundaries and fighting to protect yourself no matter what. Sometimes my parents are still regretful about the past, but I've chosen to forgive. Not for them, but for me. I no longer need them to change before I can be happy. That's a freedom I paid dearly for, and it's mine. On a beautiful day, I step onto my balcony, water my plants, sip my coffee, and let the golden sunlight pour over my tiny garden. I call Grandpa, tell him how the basil is growing. That day he recognized my voice, smiled, and said, "My granddaughter is amazing." And my heart felt warm, as if every storm had finally passed, leaving only peace in its wake. Pal is still a dark smear on my family's history, but the storm he brought is over. My little home is peaceful now. No more debt collectors at the door. No more fake mail. No more anonymous threats. And if any trouble ever returns, I know I'll be stronger, tougher, and never afraid again. I survived it all, and I'll never let myself be manipulated again. That's the greatest victory of my life. Not because I beat Pal, but because I found myself again. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been hurt by those closest to you, please remember you are not alone, and you deserve freedom and peace. Wishing you strength and resilience always. And that's the story: a long journey from despair, confusion, and loss to finally reclaiming freedom and inner peace. If this story moved you, if you felt seen or realized you're not alone in your fight against manipulation and injustice, please leave a comment below. Share your own story or just a word of encouragement for anyone out there facing what I once did. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to True Reddit Reads so you never miss another real-life Reddit drama where the truth is always told in the voices of those who were once silent. And remember, freedom isn't something you wait for someone else to give you. It's something you must claim for yourself. You deserve to live as your true self, no matter who tried to drag you down. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. I'll see you in the next story.